Well, the people of Japan are now voting in a general election that looks set to return the old political guard to power. Opinion polls are suggesting the voters will dump Prime Minister Noda and his Democratic Party in favour of the Liberal Democratic Party, which has ruled Japan for much of the past 5 decades.
Japanese voters are heading to the polls in a general election that's likely to see the conservative Liberal Democrat Party return to power. Polls suggest the LDP will win a big majority in Parliament's lower house just 3 years after a devastating defeat that ended more than 50 years of almost uninterrupted rule. Such a result would usher in a government committed to a tough stance in a territorial row with China and a radical economic agenda. The ruling Democratic Party has been hit by a string of defections and is only expected to take a third of its tally in 2009. However, many voters remained undecided days before the poll. Distaste for both major parties has spawned a clutch of new groups.
A shift to the right in Japan. After 3 years of centre-left rule, the Liberal Democratic Party are preparing for victory in this Sunday's general election. Already Prime Minister in 2006, the party's leader, Shinzo Abe, is likely to come back to power thanks to aggressive campaigning.
Every day China invades our territorial waters around the Senkaku Islands. This never happened when I was in power. Other countries mock Japan, but my party will restore honour to our country.
The party promises to rewrite the country's pacifist constitution and better defend the Senkaku Islands, claimed by both Japan and China. A nationalist agenda which appeals to the public.
I hope that Abe will put our country back together, stimulate the economy and resolve our territorial problems. Japan will be more prosperous than with the current leftist government.
According to most analysts and most polls, the DPJ, the incumbent party here in Japan, is expected to see a pretty stinging loss, and the LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party of Japan, is expected to return to power after a 3-year absence. Of course, we're going to have to wait and see until all the votes are counted, but if that does happen, if the LDP secures a majority of these seats in this general election, or even if they team up with other parties, it's then expected that in the next week or two, we will see Shinzo Abe return to become once again this country's prime minister, making him the 7th prime minister in just over 6 years.
The Democratic Party of Japan, they had a very impressive election promises in 2009, but they seem to have failed to keep many of those promises, and I guess in a way voters are punishing the DPJ by voting for the main opposition, the LDP, as you mentioned. If you watch the footage from this morning from some of the polling stations, at some places there seems to be a long queue, and we are expecting high voter turnout today because voters are particularly interested in some of the main issues discussed during this election, most notably maybe Japan's future energy policy, whether Japan should continue using nuclear energy, especially since the accident at the Fukushima power plant. But if you ask many voters, there seems to be quite a large number of voters who don't like neither the LDP nor the DPJ because their stance is quite old-fashioned, and it will be interesting to see how smaller parties will do, because there's a party which stands against nuclear energy, there's another party called the Japan Restoration Party which has a much stronger stance against China, in most notably in foreign policy as well.
The key question: can the Democratic Party retain power, or will the opposition Liberal Democratic Party return to office with former coalition partner New Komeito? The LDP lost power just 3 years ago. Much attention is on third force smaller parties trying to expand their influence in national politics. A record 1,504 candidates are running for 480 lower house seats in single-seat and proportional representation districts. The Internal Affairs Ministry says voter turnout was 27.4% as of 2 p.m. That's 7.79 points lower than the comparable figure in the previous election.